Hello and welcome back to another episode of Coffee with Carl. I wasn't here last week, and I had kind of gone back and forth with whether I was going to do a show or not, and I kind of figured, okay, when I get there, if I have time, I'll do one. If not, then it's just going to have to, wait till next week. And so you can guess what happened. We waited till next week. Now, actually, members of the Patreon did get a video. But that was a kind of a special patrons only thing where I had a whole bunch of extra stuff that I did with Jimmy DiResta, and we had I had a slow walk kind of through his workshop where he talked about his multiple century old machines and kind of went through it, and it was unscripted, him just giving us a tour of his spot. And so I didn't want that just to die. So that was released as a patrons only thing on this channel. But besides that, I took some time off, and I hope that you did too. Christmas, whether you celebrate it or not, I don't really care. I just hope that, you got to spend some time with people who care about you and who you find, bring you joy in life and stuff. And, it's funny because you'd like to think that in this sort of Norman Rockwell sense that would be your family. But when you grow up, at least I found that the people who I want to spend time with are a mix of friends and family. And just because you're a blood relative doesn't mean that I necessarily want to spend a whole lot of time with you. I know that sounds rough. That it really, as I say it, I can hear it kind of sounding like that's pretty crappy of me. But I don't mean it that way. What I mean is that just because you are blood related to someone or through marriage or whatever doesn't necessarily mean that you want to spend time with them. And I guess that's something that you only realize when you're older. Because when I was a kid, I thought, yeah, naturally everybody gets along. They're part of the same family. And I'll bet that many, many years ago, I'm talking hundreds of years ago, that the family unit was actually more important, and people probably took a little bit more put a little bit more effort into maintaining those relationships because our world was smaller, right? Human beings were, in villages, and your family were the people who were closest to you. And there were right now, I mean, I could go and talk to somebody from Dubai. I could talk to, people across the world in different time zones, from completely different cultures. You watching this now, I mean, maybe what you're looking at out your window, I mean, I'm looking outside right now and I see kind of a winter wonderland, and you may be looking out your window and seeing something so completely different. We have such a big world now with so many people in it, and it's a perfect example to use this show. I mean, I feel closer to some of you than I do with some of the family members, so I don't really care to know too much. And that sounds really crappy, but that's the world that we're in. Of course, it comes with its own problems, right? And I don't want to go down the rabbit hole because I tend to do that and then ramble on. I mean, it comes with its issues with isolation, right? I mean, if all of your friends are through the digital world, you're getting no real face-to-face time. And from what I've heard, I haven't really seen it much with my own eyes. They say that the kids these days, they don't know how to have a conversation. I don't think that's true. I've met many young people who are they're killing it as far as their Riz, which is short for charisma. So the old guy in me figured that out. But I think that face-to-face conversation is really important. I think getting to know people and meet people in real world scenarios is very important. And I think that we deep down crave that, as nice as it is to be able to connect like this and have these virtual friendships. There's a reason that people will do meetups and hangs, and I know Albert has put together a group. I think it's called Tri-State Denim Hangs, and it's like the group will meet up and just hang out for a day, and they don't necessarily only talk about clothes. I think that's what brought them together. But if I had to guess, I would say that they probably don't spend a whole lot of time really talking about that thing. It's the reason that people seek out clubs. It's the reason that church used to be a bigger deal than it is now. It was a way to get people together and have that unit, because we're social creatures. We need other people. And I don't know about you. I mean, I consider myself pretty introverted. I mean, if I'm in the area where, a perfect example, I mean, if I go to a wedding or something like that, I stick to my table and, maybe I'll strike a conversation with somebody who's next to me. But besides that, I'm not really one to just walk around and mingle and, it just feels to me very disingenuous. I don't like that small talk kind of thing where it's like, oh yeah, who are you? What do you do for a living? And I really don't care. I mean, let's be honest, I really don't care. And so that, that's just something I have a hard time stomaching. But anyway, as somebody who's pretty introverted, I still feel like at the end of the day, if I don't talk to somebody, if I don't have some interaction with human beings, I feel sort of just down, just low. And that's no good. I don't know what I started going down this rabbit hole with, but or why I started going down this rabbit hole. But anyway, here we are. Well, I guess the reason is because, one of the other things that I took a break from this week was looking at any social media, like releases, email list kind of stuff, paying attention to brands. I really focused on hanging out with, the people who I wanted to hang out with during Christmas. And, there's so much that comes with that, especially with young kids. I mean, my kids are young and of course, Santa is a big, big thing. So there's a lot of preparation around that. I'm going to smack whoever invented Elf on the Shelf. I'll tell you that much, because I had a hard time at the end, like figuring out where am I going to place this thing, because at night they would go to bed. I would find another place to put it. And like for the first couple weeks, right, you come up with these creative ideas, and then at the end you're just like, I don't know, now they're sitting in the wreath, And when I see like these social media posts of these like super moms who are like posing them and like doing little setups and stuff, I'm like, man, who has the time for that? I mean, I'm exhausted at the end of the day. So anyway, it was a big deal for the kids. I cannot believe the amount of packaging that I had to throw away. I'm talking like filling up garbage bags with everything that isn't the toy. And, we try to really limit what we give our kids, because what I didn't want was them to get to the end of opening their gifts and kind of forget the first thing that they bought or the first thing that they opened. I don't want them to, I want them to have a good Christmas, but I don't want it to be like just overwhelming with stuff. And the second reason for that is that I remember the first Christmas of my mom being single and thinking, what happened? It was like this abundance of toys and stuff. And then the first year it was just my mom. It was a lot less. And, that's pretty harsh. That's one of those things as a kid, it's a marker of things maybe not going so well. And I remember that feeling of like, uh-oh, are we okay? And it's so easy to forget, but kids just need to know that they're secure. They need to know that they're safe. And that's why, having the family unit is so important. And, so these are the things that I'm into, especially like trying to be a good father and stuff, But, yeah, so Christmas was good. And I really do hope that yours was good as well. I read these stories and see these statistics about people who are, they are, at their lowest point around the holidays because they don't have anybody. And like, that just breaks my heart. I'll tell you one little anecdote was when I was working on the railroad, when I was talking to some of the conductors down there, they said that people unaliving themselves is highest around Christmas time. And, you can't use the word that I would like to use here, because supposedly YouTube will find it and that video will be blocked or whatever. I don't know. So they say unalive. You know what I'm saying, though. And so, that was pretty scary to hear. So a lot of people are low, and I hope that wasn't you. And I hope that if you maybe know somebody who that applies to, that you were able to maybe invite them. My buddy who I've discussed a couple times, I've told you about, I invited him to come over to our Christmas. He declined. Of course, I tried to get him to come, and when somebody pushes back enough, right? I think 2 or 3 times where they say, no, I'm good, you got to leave it, right? Because the first time they may be declining out of, no, I don't want to inconvenience you or whatever. But the second time, maybe the third time that they say, no, I'm really actually very good, I'm fine, then you got to leave it alone. And that's what I did. I just said, all right, well, look, if you want to, if last minute you want to come over or whatever, or if you want me to stop down, I will. But, he was like, no, I'm good. I'm good. And so I'll do something. I think, usually what I'll do is I'll buy him like a sandwich or something like that, or a dinner or something like that, and I'll leave it at his door, So if he doesn't want to see anybody, at least I can kind of, interact with him that way. So since I didn't look at anything this week, I kind of wanted to discuss a little bit of where I came from, where the channel is now, where I'm going, and maybe talk to you about some of the pitfalls and the things that I'm trying to deal with right now, because I'm at this interesting spot where the main channel has like 175,000 subscribers. I could put out a video and it'll get, 50 to 100,000 views. I mean, by almost every metric, the channel's a success, and I'm so grateful for that. It took so long to get here. 9 years I've been doing this now. That I want to make sure that I kind of stay on the straight and narrow. And I think that it can be really easy to be swayed and to go one way or the other and to have your channel ruined. I always like to look at those posts where people will, they have that, I don't know where it's from, but it's like Wesley Snipes. He's pointing a gun at something and he's got like tears in his eyes. And it's like, what channel do you have to do this to? One that you loved and then had to unsubscribe from or stop watching. And so there's been a few of those for me. I think, Wrangler Star is probably the one that comes to mind first. I used to love his stuff when he would just like show you how to hang an axe or do homesteading things or like, practical life skills. But then he started going a little wild. And I've read your comments. I think that maybe you're right. Maybe it is an act, like maybe he's playing up that side of it to be sensational and to get the views. I remember him talking about how, he gets a lot of comments about people don't like the clickbait titles, and him saying like, yeah, I don't either. But you know what? This is the game that I'm playing. And if YouTube says I have to play this game because it gets more views, then that's what I have to do. And I understand that wholeheartedly. It sucks. What I learned a long time ago was that a good photo does not make a good thumbnail. Not usually. And title is probably the most important thing. Without getting too nitty gritty about this stuff, because these are the kind of things I discuss with my wife and then I see her eyes glaze over. The way it works with YouTube is that when you're scrolling through, I scroll through too. I use the Brave browser because if you didn't know, if you use Brave, you don't have to have an ad blocker. You can just watch YouTube and there are no ads. It's awesome. So as I scroll through Brave, the first thing you look at is you look at the thumbnail. So the thumbnail has to be the thing that makes you go, huh, what's that? And then the title is digging a little bit deeper. So the first step is that thumbnail. It's them looking at it going, what, huh? It's the intrigue. And the title is the thing that's supposed to really make them go, all right, now I got to see what this is. And I stumbled upon this formula a while back when I did a thing about the Finex cast iron pans. I found this cool picture that they had of all the handles. If you remember, their handles are like a spring with this really cool looking brass nut on the end of it. And I think I said something, it was like the product that'll outlive you or something like that. So I did it because that's a pretty cool title, but the picture was just interesting. And I was like, but it happened to work. And this is why. When you saw the thumbnail, it wasn't really, if it was a cast iron pan, it wouldn't have done very well. But since it just showed that one little piece of it, which was kind of like you couldn't tell what it was. Like, it's a spring. It's not, what is this? And then this thing that'll outlive you, but I don't tell you what it is. It makes people go, all right, well, what is that thing? I got to check it out. And they click and they watch. And so, that's the formula. Now, that doesn't apply to everything, right? Because you can't do that with every single video. And so this one that I did with Jimmy DiResta, Things I Wish My Father Taught Me, that was a good example of not having to do that, right? Because I don't want to, maybe I should just to get more views. I don't know. But the point of that was not to make money. Number one, it cost a lot of money to make. There was 3 of us who went there. I had to pay them, take a day off of work, go to Jimmy's place, come back. That took a lot of editing and stuff to put together, but it's a labor of love. It's something that I wanted to make. But I didn't do that with that. I stated the title of the series with Jimmy DiResta. She took a picture of us, and because I wanted it to be honest, I didn't want it to be this clickbait thing, because doing enough of that, you just feel like you lose your soul. But anyway, that's kind of YouTube, and we could discuss a little bit more of that maybe another time. I don't know, because I want your input. You know what I mean? I want to know that I'm not going down a bad path. And I was on Reddit this morning looking through like, what boot channels are good or whatever, and people, of course, were naming like the big names that and mine was in there, and I remember that somebody had said something like, but he's all business or something like that, and I don't really know exactly what that means. I don't want to look too hard at one comment. I want to sort of take the aggregate, but you have to kind of pay attention, because one comment most likely represents several people who are feeling that way. And the other thing I could think of is that maybe what they meant was, I've been doing too many collaborations. And I have felt like that for a little bit now. I think that they've gotten a little out of control. At first, it was cool. And I got to do some stuff that I always wanted to do. And then it became flattering, right? Oh boy, people really want me to work with them. That's great. But now it's becoming like, I don't want every other video to be a collaboration. That sucks. Like, I don't want to watch that. And I can see when I look at my metrics, every time I do one of those videos, I get people who unsubscribe. And I don't want to turn into that. So I think this next year I have to sort of course correct and do fewer collaborations. Number one, those videos aren't very fun to make. I don't particularly like watching collaborative videos. I like making the product, and I'll tell you what's at the heart of it is I like my friends' companies to do well, and if I can help them make something and then promote it and then they sell it and they do well with it, I want to help a friend, you know what I mean? And that's the way a lot of these brands are. Is like Gareth from Jim Green, perfect example. Like, he's a good guy and I want him to do well, and I love Jim Green as a company, and if I could do something that helps them out, then I will do that. Or Greg Field, you know what I mean? If we can do a cool jacket together and he sells a bunch of units, then that would be awesome. And these are friends and I want to see them succeed. But I think sometimes I forget that what it's doing is it's helping them succeed, but it's kind of taken away from what I'm trying to do, which is make fun videos. So it's a lesson learned, and I think that I have to really reel it in. I don't think I'll ever stop doing collaborations, but I think I need to really cut it down to like half of what I've done. I mean, it shouldn't be every other video. It should be maybe one every few months. So I'm talking maybe 3 collabs a year or something like that. It should be a surprise. It should be fun to watch. That's one of the things that I've learned. But this is something I wanted to talk about today because I think this is kind of neat. When I started doing these videos, all right, when I first started, it was 2015. I had just gotten back from this thing called StyleCon, all right? Antonio Centeno, Aaron Marino, they were the ones who put it on. I met Brock McGough there of Modest Man. Actually, he sold Modest Man, so he's just Brock now. And I met a bunch of other people, and some people who have stopped doing this, and some people have continued. I came back from that conference, like, electrified. I was like, this is going to be great. I can't wait to start. So I took the only camera that I had at the time, which was a GoPro. Was it this GoPro? It might have been this GoPro. I don't know. What series is this? It's an old one. Doesn't even have the front-facing screen. I had this. I placed it on my bookshelf, and I said, all right, I'm going to go. And I just stood there, and I was like, had nothing to say. And so I said, all right, well, obviously it's not just me talking into a camera. I need to do something better. So I started researching, what do I need to do? And a GoPro really wasn't going to cut it. I mean, you could make it with a GoPro, but I mean, audio on this thing kind of sucks. And so I was like, all right, I'm not going to do that. The GoPro is going to be, for swimming or filming family stuff, I guess. So next thing I did was I purchased a DSLR. This right here is not it. This is a mirrorless. This is the Canon R5 with, a bigger lens that I had on it. But I had bought the Canon 70D because I had seen Casey Neistat talk about it, and it was his vlog camera of choice. So I found a kit package, right? It came with, I think, 2 lenses. It came with a 15 to 55 or something like that, or 18 to 55, and a longer one, which I think was like 180 millimeter or something like that. I don't remember exactly. And I set that up, and I bought a cheap lavalier microphone. Don't forget, this is all just like out of pocket, right? This isn't a business expense because I wasn't making any money on it. And I set it up, and I did that first video that I did about the Anson belt. And I used that Canon 70D for a long time. I mean, probably the first 3 or 4 years of doing this, I used that same camera. And just because of memory and nostalgia, I kind of wish that I never got rid of it. So now, I mean, I like the DSLR or mirrorless thing. It's cool, but it lacks a lot of things. So what I mean is, like, when I'm going to take B-roll or I'm going to do a video like this, right? This has a time limit on it. I think it's like 25 minutes and it shuts off because these are really meant for photos, They can do video. And back when it was the Canon 5D Mark II, right? That was the first DSLR which could do video. But they were primarily meant to take pictures. So that's what I use this for. I use this right here for most of the thumbnail images. Sometimes if I need like a third angle or something like that, I might use it. But for the most part, I don't use this very much. So from this, I went to something kind of like this. This isn't it exactly, because a lot of times I sold these cameras and I upgraded, which was a entry level cinema camera. I actually had, and still have somewhere, the Canon C100 Mark II, right? And it was cool because it had the dual pixel autofocus. And the greatest thing about that camera was that I didn't have to deal with batteries or time limits or anything like that. I just plugged it in and it would work. And it was a great camera. It was only HD, no 4K, no none of that stuff. It was 8-bit. And I used that camera for a long time. It was great. And I still do have it. Like I said, I loaned it out to a friend. He's doing some stuff with it and he's going to return it to me. But it's a great camera to, matter of fact, it's a great camera even today, because it will record for so long. When you put a bigger SD card in there and your battery, you get I forgot how many, hundreds of minutes out of it if you wanted to, which is how I started getting into doing B-roll, right? So, I mean, I always wanted to do cool B-roll and product images. I wanted to look as beautiful as possible. What I want to do is basically make it as close as you can be to holding the product in your hand, right? So you should be able to see all the stitching and the colors and the textures and all that stuff. And with this, because of the time limit and the recording limits on it, you would record and then you'd have to stop. And that sucked, right? And it was just a pain in the neck. So finally, with my entry-level cinema camera, I was able to record for as long as I want, experiment with different things, sliders, and stuff like that. Now, this one here, this is the Canon, what is this, the 80? No, C80. So this is C80. It does awesome stuff. RF mount on there, and I have it a little bit rigged out now. You can, see the base plate with these rods on it and stuff like that. But if I wanted to strip this down, it basically looks like a big DSLR, which also means that, if I pop this top handle off it and stuff, if I'm going someplace and you maybe don't want to bring a big camera, then you can use this, and it still gets really good video and stuff like that. Now, the only issue with this is that it is small, and I don't have things on this that I would like a D-tap to power a monitor. It has these miniature, it doesn't have XLR inputs for my microphone, it has mini XLRs, which I have a converter for, but that's what I mean. When you have to add all these different, adapters and stuff like that, I might as well just rig out a DSLR. But this is that's why I have this. This is a really good option for run and gun kind of stuff, right? And it does it gets 95% of the way there of my main camera rig, which is this. Okay, so this is a tank, all right? And I'm going to admit to you right away, it's absolutely overkill. There is no doubt about it. This right here does not need to be this big, right? All the stuff on here, you don't need to make great videos. You really, really don't. So if I don't need this, why do I have it? Well, one of the things that I think has always set apart my content is really nice looking product shot and B-roll. And part of getting that really crispy look, that next level kind of thing. I mean, I always loved watching documentaries like Planet Earth and stuff like that, where it's oh my God, the images just practically jump off the screen. Unfortunately, to do that, it's just like with recording in studios, there are certain things that you need, and you simply can't do it. You can't do it with a DSLR. You certainly can't do it with a GoPro. And even an entry-level cinema camera like that C80 kind of have their limitations. So this here is my main rig, and this is what I'll use to do all the B-roll. I even have used it for some of my talking head stuff, but and the reason is that, okay, so let me kind of break it down. This is the Canon C500 Mark II. Now, this is a great camera because it records in a lot of different formats. It records slow motion, which I don't use a whole lot of slow motion. What I was really interested in was the high bitrate RAW, and the fact that it also had autofocus, because those things are kind of hard to find. So this will record in 6K at, I think, 10-bit, and I think there's even options above that, but it also gives you this wonderful dynamic range. It's just a very good-looking image. Now, that doesn't really matter a whole lot if the camera does that, if the lens won't deliver, right? You have to have a lens that will resolve enough so that your sensor can capture it. So when you have a nice sensor like that, you have to have a lens to capture it. So I like these Tacchina Vista Cinema Primes. I have 3 of them, and they really do a nice job of giving me sort of that high-end look, and I really like that. Now, the problem with using a Cinema Prime like this and a camera like that is that sometimes the image could be a little bit too digital, right? It's almost a little too much now. So what this thing is on the front here, this is called a matte box, and you see it has these different things that slide in and out of it. And in each one of these are filter trays. You could put a filter inside of these. Now, there's 3 on this one. I have never used 3, but some people will. Sometimes I'll put in a circular polarizer to get the shine off of something. It's a really shiny boot. You could kind of turn the circular polarizer and cut down that shine, just like on your polarized sunglasses. And I will also use some sort of diffusion often with this. I'll usually use I have a couple. I like the Black Pro Mist is really nice, and I have another one called a Digicon by the company called Schneider. And that takes that really crispy kind of digital image and it softens it a little bit. Gives you nice bloom around the highlights and a little bit of a glow. And it's something I've been playing around with a lot. If you've seen my videos, you know that there's not a lot of consistency between my sitting down and talking to you kind of thing. And a lot of times that's because I'm constantly experimenting with different looks, different lenses and stuff like that. And so that's part of that. Now, you know, the matte box I could take off of there. I could easily use a cheaper lens on this. You can even strip down this DSLR. I did run this DSLR. You can even strip down this camera. I've run this camera on a shoulder rig when I was out in Montana. And so on the back of this camera, you can see actually this module right here, right? This whole section is an add-on. Now, this add-on gives me a lot of things that I mentioned are a little bit of an issue with these smaller cinema cameras. Number one, it allows me to attach a gigantic battery. This is a V-mount battery right here. So this battery right here will last me my entire session up here and then some. The other cool thing is it has little taps on there in case you want to power other things. So that will go on here. It powers everything. This is a small HD 7-inch monitor, which I'll put my final image on. And then this one here I'll usually use for like focus peaking or any other kind of like aids that you want. So if I want to make sure something's in focus, I could turn this on to, you know, show me that, or even the highlights to make sure that the skin tones are good or whatever. And then my final image, more or less what it's going to look like on screen, will be on here. The other thing is that this one here allows me to plug in 4 different microphones. So I could plug in, 4 mics. And I've never done that, but usually I run a safety track, I run a main track. And so I can plug those into here, which is really nice to have. This also has the D-taps on it, so I can power a couple of these other things. But more or less, it makes it so that when it's mounted to sticks or tripod, it's easier to just operate. And that's what it is. So at the expense of weight and mobility, you have something that you literally turn on and just work. And so you don't have to have a whole bunch of adapters. Everything on this is meant to work on this, and it has never failed me. Sometimes you hear about these cameras that you turn on, and they simply won't work. Red's famous for, having issues with booting up or just dying on set or whatever. Canon is very robust. So that's why I've stuck with that brand. Now, this little thing on the side here, you may see this, and I know a lot of people don't know what this is. This is actually for manual focus. So I mentioned before that I like the fact that this has autofocus, and you could definitely see a difference in my videos when I use the autofocus versus the manual focus. Okay, so you turn this and you can see, I don't know if you can see there, but the barrel of this turns. So that's an easier way. So you don't have to go in the front and do this. You could just do it off the side here. And you could tell a difference, especially when I'm panning across a boot or something, and you can see it, the autofocus will jump to different focus points. This one, on the other hand, I can make as smooth as possible. And I know all these things sound like a really far way to go for just a YouTube video that somebody's watching on their phone while they're probably taking a dump. And it is. But to me, this is like part of my craft. If I'm going to learn how to do this stuff and I'm going to make videos, I want to be good at it. And I want it to look beautiful. And I want it to look better this year than it did last year and constantly improve. So as far as price goes with stuff like this, let's start at the beginning, okay? I think I paid like $300 or something like that for the GoPro. When I bought my DSLR, that was, I think, just over $1,000 for the kit lens, the body, a few other things that came with it. It was about $1,000. It was a big, big deal. Then when I bought my C100 Mark II, I think that was like $3,000 or something like that. And then I had bought a couple of lenses, you know. Then I remember I bought a Canon EF 24 millimeter, and that thing was like $900, and I was about to have a heart attack. But I used that lens for a really, really long time. The camera that I'm filming on right now actually came after that C100. That's the C300 Mark II, which I still use today because it still produces a beautiful image. It's 4K, 10-bit. It's great, and I can plug it in, and it just goes. That is actually very much like this one, but just an older version of it. I think that camera, I believe I bought for about $5,000 when I bought the Canon C300 Mark II. This guy right in front of me here was significantly more. The body, now it's on sale, I think, for $7. No, now it's on sale for $10. They had marked it down. I think originally it was closer to $15 for just the camera body. This module on the back here, if I remember correctly, was about $1,000. The batteries for this will depend on how big they are, but usually you could pay a few $100 for those. I have a couple of those. The lens is the big boy. These Tokina Vista Cinema Primes, they range from about $6,000 to about $8,000. I think that you can get one that's about 12, I believe that's 180 millimeter. The map box and all this other kind of stuff that's hanging off of here, maybe another $1,000 for that. So we're looking at, probably a $25,000 to $30,000 rig here with everything that's included on it. And again, do you need that to make a great video? No, absolutely not. But this just does things, and it makes it easier to make a great looking image. So if I can look at this and sort of make a little bit of a leap as to my career here on YouTube, which, started off as a hobby, going from this here to this here is hopefully as good as my content has gotten. That's my goal. It seems kind of silly to have, it's like a singer who's not very good using a beautiful Neumann U87, really expensive microphone, right? It's like, whoa, hang on a second. Your skills don't really match the equipment. And I don't think my skills match this equipment yet, but it's a good way to keep pushing and getting better. And so that this is not the thing that's holding me back. The equipment isn't the bottleneck of the content. Now, past this, I mean, it may sound crazy, right? I mean, I just told you this whole thing right here is probably like 25, 30 grand, right? It goes way past this. I mean, this is dipping a toe into the world of like cinema cameras. You want to talk about like the ARRI, the ARRI Mini LF, or what's that, the new one, the 65, and I think they just came out with a new one. I mean, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. The Cook lenses are $30,000 a piece, and then forget about when you get to like the ARRI Signature Primes, and it gets really, really crazy. Now that would be, as much as I would love to have an ARRI Mini LF, and if anybody has one, I'll take it off your hands. As much as I would love to have something like that and see what it's like to operate, I'm not there yet. I need to master this first, and I'm not even close to that. So a little bit of behind the scenes. I hope that wasn't too boring for you. So on top of that expensive camera equipment, there's also lighting. There's also audio. Forget it. I mean, audio gets really expensive just in itself. There's the space, right? I'm lucky enough to have built this space and be able to make these videos. And I guess what I'm trying to get at is my investment into what I'm trying to do is great. I mean, it's really, really high, and I don't want to be stupid and do something that will go against my main goal here. I want to make sure that, like, I'm talking to you and we're kind of aligned, and that if I'm going on a bad road, that somebody brings me back to normal. There's nothing worse than when one of your favorite channels just gets really bad and you're like, what happened? I remember somebody was saying that's what happened to Donut Media. I never really watched it. And I guess it gets ruined. And so I don't want that to happen. Please try to keep me accountable. I know that everybody has an opinion, so it's going to be one of those things where, like, I mean, if you did everything, if you did everything that everybody wanted you to do, you would just be going in too many directions. It would just be, there'd be no flow at all. So I try to listen to everything I can, but this is me trying to ask for help in maintaining some level of credibility and doing what you came here to see. You know what I mean? It's interesting to get to this point and have these problems. It's not what I expected. All right, next week we are going to continue with the regular scheduled programming. I'm going to talk about products. I'm going to talk about new releases. With the holidays, most of the time what brands will do is that they're pushing things, right? So most of the emails that I got were gift guide to Ironheart or Carhartt or whoever, Just have to use 2 with heart at the end of it. But, that's what they're doing. They're not necessarily coming out with new stuff. They're about moving the stock they have now. But more things will be coming out, and I'm going to be talking about those going into the new year and those stuff that you've tuned in for the last year or so. That's going to be coming up. So this is a little bit of a different episode, but I wanted to check in. I miss you guys. I miss talking. I miss, interacting with you in the comments, and I really do enjoy making these videos. The main channel is great, and it's my baby, and there's a lot that I'm very proud of over there, but I feel that sometimes it lacks the laid back atmosphere that I really appreciate about this. I mean, I just talked for 40 minutes about basically nothing. And if you made it this far, I really appreciate it. But we are going to go to the patrons only segment right now. Thank you for the rest of you who have watched. That was a terrible sentence. I'm sorry about that. Thank you to the rest of you guys. I hope that 2025 is the best year yet. And I don't mean that in any small way. I mean that I hope that 2025 is the point where you can look back and you go, that was the year that stuff started getting real good. So whatever that means for you, whether it's relationships, whether it's professionally, whatever that might be, I want it to be great. And if there's something that I can do to help you out, let me know. I'll do my best.